because that's live.
Broad topics, broad minds, broad hosts, but not just for broads. This is Broadscast with Kim Goldman and Jackie McDougall.
Welcome to Broadscast. Hi, Kim.
Hi, Jackie McDougall.
Thanks for showing up.
All right, let's get it out of the way. I was sitting in the driveway of the studio on the phone handling personal and other business, and I know Jackie was peering through the window, willing me to come in, and I was telling the person on the phone,
I was like that kid in the back of the bus, you know, with his face planted.
So I apologize, Jackie,
Seriously,
for the
like,
extra
she
level.
either
I was
doesn't-
here.
She
I was
either
here
doesn't
20
show up until right before, or she shows up and then just sits and chats on the phone, throwing her hair back, and you know. Anyway, you people have no idea how this goes down.
Hey, you know what? When you are a busy lady, you take all the minutes you can get to organize because my day is full until 7 o'clock tonight. So I was making memories and magic happen.
Yes.
Causing
So
you stress.
I want to hear
apologize.
about memories and magic and all of that. But I'm excited because earlier or late last year, we had our very first episode where we just invited the BroadSquad in. If you guys missed that, it was Renee Bowen and Jamie Cox. And we talked about just broad topics. And I love that because while I love to do interviews and meet new people, I love to hear also from our BroadSquad and to just kind of shoot the breeze. Why are you looking at me crazy, Kim?
I'm looking at you because I don't usually hold my mic, and now that I have it, I want to sing. I'm really resisting, and so I'm listening to you, but I'm like, I just want to break out into song.
So we're gonna spare you guys that. So, but today in the studio, and one of our guests is on her way, but we have Shoreen.
Hello.
Say your last name.
Maghame.
Maghame. It's so like exotic and
Shoreen Maghame.
and feel free to like
It is good.
make out with the mic and make sure you're close and yeah.
Hello. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
And then we'll also have Cindy Mori coming in a few minutes. And you guys have known Kim for
More than 20 years?
Yeah.
Is that right?
Since 1994.
We did.
Full disclosure, Shoreen was one of the many reporters that covered the trial of my brother's murder, but she was one of the select group of reporters that I became super tight with and stayed close with for all these years. So
wow, how'd you penetrate into that inner circle? We've discussed how hard that is.
It's interesting. There was actually just 6 reporters who were able to be in the courtroom every day, all day. And I was one of them. And I sat in the front row. It was my first job. Right.
Who were you reporting for?
City News Service, which was a small wire service, which is a small but mighty wire service here in Southern California. And my job was to cover the criminal courts. And, you know, when I got a call one day saying, hey, can you look up the abuse case on O.J. Simpson? I was so out of it. I was like, wait, is that the football player guy?
Right.
And that started, but you know, I sat just a few feet from Kim and her family, and I think we just connected. You know, we were like around the same age, and just to be there and see what they went through, and I just felt so much for them and such empathy, but also such admiration because they were so strong and they stayed together and they were able to do that under the most unbelievable circumstances that anybody could have even really gotten through. It is amazing to me, but they did because of their strength.
But it's just amazing for me, and you know, being friends with Kim. But she at such a vulnerable time, she was able to actually allow herself to connect with people. Do you know what I mean? Like sometimes, you know, you want to just guard yourself. Protect yourself, put up a wall around you. So we have another guest who's just arrived. Cindy, welcome.
Hi.
Scoot up,
we
join
were talking
us.
about the trial. So Kim and I met during the first trial. And I don't know why. Like, why did you become friends with me? It was kind of weird because I was supposed to. These are the days. Like, I was supposed to be objective. I was supposed to be objective.
How can you be?
And my reporting, which I tried to be, it was very straight stories. But we forged a friendship.
You know what? I think it's like anywhere in life, you get a sense of somebody, you know, and you either there's something that you connect to, or we also didn't know that we should be afraid. Like we didn't know to be we just didn't know what we were supposed to. It wasn't until a little bit later that we're like, oh, wait a minute, there's people hiding in the bathroom stalls listening to my conversation. I didn't know those things until a little bit later.
Right.
So the connection just happened because Shoreen's cool and she has a warmth and there was and I don't mean this negatively, but there was a level of like inexperience and
innocence, for sure.
Yeah,
naivete. I mean, I wasn't.
Right, you were totally green, so it wasn't like you. Maybe you didn't even have it in you yet to be so manipulative. Like, I mean,
no, I still don't.
Well, you know what I'm saying. So I think
no, but this one over here.
Okay, so Cindy,
Wait, what?
Welcome to the party here. So we are just kind of like. You guys are part of our Broad Squad. We're just trying to figure out how we all are connected. So how did you meet?
So I was
wait, Cindy and Maury, we need to give a little.
Oh yes.
So
Cindy, we gave you a little. So you were a journalist. Now you're in marketing. You've been, Cindy, in television for a zillion years.
Yeah, for my whole career, really. I started at CNN in Washington, pretty quickly out of college, and I did political talk shows, and then. People magazine became as interesting as Time magazine. So I moved on to Good Morning America, and I spent 3 years in New York covering all kinds of news, working on the weekend edition of Good Morning America. And then, truth be told, I was having some boy problems in New York City.
Back to the boys.
Yes. I was having some boy problems in New York City and really needed change of pace. But obviously, you know, my job at ABC News was really important to me, and the civil trial for O.J. Simpson was starting, and someone was going on maternity leave, and so I went out to L.A. really just to fill in for her, and then started working as a producer on the trial, and Shoreen was the on-air talent.
So by this time, I graduated to
ABC.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So Shoreen was on air, and I would book her to be on the morning show to talk about what happened in the previous day. And by that time,
it was a really hard job. She'd be like, "Do you want a car to pick you up? What time?
Well,
but
wait,
how's it going to be
at?" We were live at 4 a.m. on the West Coast.
Oh,
so the car, I would wake up at 1:30 in the morning. The car would pick her up at 2 in the morning. She'd come in, do hair and makeup, go live on the air at 4 a.m. and then we'd all go home and go back to sleep.
No.
Wake up and start our day.
You go to court.
You didn't go back to sleep?
No.
I didn't either. I just started working at 2 a.m. But, you know, Kim and Shoreen were already friendly. And, you know, we were all around the same age at that time. And we were young. We were in our 20s when that happened. And
I mean, we aren't anymore. She got older, but I didn't.
I got the oldest. But
neither one of your face shows that you've gotten older.
Yeah, I know. I'm a little disgusted. I'm sorry.
No, so I think part of it was that, you know, Shoreen and Kim had met previously. And we were the same age. And this was a story that transcended everything. And so to sort of be that young and know the people involved, and also feel a connection because we were young women starting our lives and our careers, and then Kim being a part of it, sort of, I don't know, there was a bond, but we were really, Kim came through Shoreen, and then I moved here and stayed after that trial, which was going to be a few months and went on for many more. And then I ended up staying for a few years before going on to Oprah in Chicago for many, many years.
So then you moved to Chicago for Oprah.
Yeah. So I can't say the years because that will really age me, but you know, Oprah.
I think people can do math, though.
Yeah, I guess they can do math.
Surprise.
Yeah.
Although
anyway, the short
in this
version
climate, I'm not
is,
sure they can.
You know, I grew up in Minnesota. You know, Chicago was sort of closer to home, and you know, Oprah was Oprah, and what she was doing on television every day was inspiring to me, and I was a viewer and a fan, and I just thought, you know, that for me is the dream job after 6 years in news and 10 years, you know, in politics, news, and all that. I just was looking for something different, so eventually I got a job. I had a rejection letter 4 years prior from Oprah, but 4 years after that I got
Some
in.
people,
and I spent,
that's enough for them to be like, hey, I have a rejection letter from Oprah.
But that's why I kept it. I still have it because I had the stationery from Oprah. And so I've been with her ever since. I'm going on 18 years, so 12 years with the show, and then, you know, as she started the network, I worked for that too.
That's amazing. So, I mean, it's just, it must have been, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but it must have been kind of easy at that age and that time in your life to kind of feel like put yourself in Kim's shoes, you know, because you're all around the same age and like. I think anybody, I mean, I was in Massachusetts at the time. We were not friends. Like it was very easy to go, wow, that, and I think, forget the celebrity and all that stuff. When it comes to your family, it was very easy to go, wow, that could be me. That could
absolutely.
be.
Absolutely. And your dad reminded me so much of my dad.
Yeah. I mean, you have a tight family. You're one of 3 sisters.
Yeah.
Do you have sisters?
I have a brother and a sister.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I think that sometimes is why people feel this connection, because they're like, you're like my sister, you're like my, that I can't imagine or whatever. But I think, more than anything at that time, like you said, that we were in our early 20s. I mean, I was just fumbling about, but you guys were in your careers. And so I think that, we were working so hard to be successful and to prove ourselves, and you getting on I joke about this, and we've always laughed about Dan Abrams. Dan when Court TV started, and Dan was like, now he ran MSNBC for a while, and he had his own show.
He's just a couple years older than us too.
And I remember,
Although he looks about 20 years older.
Sorry,
Dan.
Yeah, but I remember, it was just the dawn of so many things that were happening in the to be able to look back and think how news was then, and cable news, the internet didn't exist, and how crazy that you guys have been able to kind of.
And I think the truth is too that we were also able to relate to Ron, and the fact that here's just somebody who was also just struggling to get started in life, and in a place that we were also familiar with, that was quote unquote safe, and was trying to do a good deed, and it unmasked the vulnerability and the fickleness of life.
Right.
And how, I was actually on the way here and I was listening to that lottery commercial, California lottery commercial. Have you ever heard it? It was a day like any other until it wasn't, and that could be winning the lottery, but it also could be, getting that horrible phone call. So I think for us and for me, I mean, in some ways, yes, I was innocent, but in some ways I wasn't, because my family had been through so much, and we've been through a revolution and evacuated from numerous countries, and so it was like, oh gosh,
do you mind diving in a little bit into that, because I think it's important. One of the things that we do, like with our Broad Squad, is we all are out there on social media, we have our opinions about this and our thoughts about that, but you don't really get to go deep and where these opinions and thoughts and
stem from,
like the foundation of that. So I think the more we kind of explore what makes somebody tick and where they come from, I think that's the only way as a country we can start to be more open and empathetic. Do you know what I mean? So go back to that a little bit more, please.
Well, just, in terms of my background, I was born in Anaheim. I was like right next to Disneyland, but my parents met in Fresno. My mom was 17 when she got married. She's American. Her mom was from Ireland. Her dad was like 6th generation Irish. But my dad was here from Iran going to school. And so he is Iranian. And so they met, they got married, and I was born, and then we went to Iran. And my sisters were both born in Iran. And my mom started a school there, an international school, a preschool. My dad had, big kind of job. He was in charge of all the sort of power lines in the country. And my grandfather had been a general, and, we had this life in Iran, and we would come to the States in the summer and visit my grandparents and everything. And then the revolution happened. And, one day it was just started to fall apart just like that overnight. One day everything was normal and you were going to school, and the next day there were hundreds of thousands of people in the streets, and they were saying, death to the Shah and death to America. And one day there were martial law and tanks, and the lights would go out at 8:00 every night, and my grandmother would make us crawl on the floor because the snipers would also come out.
Oh my gosh.
Or, one day you're going to school and you get stuck in a riot with tear gas and soldiers and snipers, and you're hiding underneath your seat in the bus. So it from a young age, I realized that like everything can change so fast, and was always aware of that. And then one day it was like, you know what, we're just going to leave. The American embassy evacuated its nationals. And so my mom and my sisters and I just left. We had a suitcase, and I had my doll Nini. And we went on a Pan Am, and we went to Turkey, and there had been a coup attempt, so we couldn't get off the plane. There were tanks on the runway.
Oh my gosh.
And then we went to Rome, and it was in the middle of the Red Brigade scare, so it's a big terrorism scare in the 70s, 79. And there were soldiers all over with machine guns in the airport. And then we landed in New York, and there was a blizzard. It was like, what is happening?
Welcome to America.
And my mom, imagine, she was so young. She was like 28 or something. 3 little girls, like a baby, and, like 3 little kids by herself.
And where was your dad at that point?
He stayed behind. And we were, just go to home. It's going to blow over. And you can come back. Just go hang with your parents for a while. So that was a long time ago. No, my dad eventually left, obviously. But, we left everything behind. We never went back.
And so do you see everything going on in our country right now and how easy it can be for those of us who've never experienced anything like that to be, I think some people are just like, well, refugees, they need to handle their own, business and not come here and not bother us.
Yeah.
And give us your take on kind of what's going on.
Well, I always felt like I was of 2 worlds. So even when I came here, I was American, but at the time there was the hostage crisis, and people would lie and say they were Italian. They weren't Iranian. I had a teacher in school tell me I was a stupid Iranian. We had spray painted by our house, Iranians go home. So it was interesting to be in Iran, and it was bad to be American, and then come here and it was bad to be Iranian. So both sides of me, it was like being with divorced parents, hated each other. So one side of you was always in trouble. But so I can empathize, I can understand. And I think that it's hard for a lot of people who have never seen that, who haven't really traveled outside and haven't really experienced how fast things can change, and they can feel like it's never going to happen here. And I've always been paranoid that it would. So I think I read an article the other day which said that Americans are afraid, or don't want to ever think that they could be refugees.
Right.
But you can't, an earthquake can happen. Think about, Hurricane Katrina. What those people were out of their homes, and in some places, it's the same thing. So I'm very empathetic about it. And I'm very, I'm worried that we stereotype people and what that could mean, and how that could translate into just everybody else.
So a lot of things we have in common, but one of which is that we all have boys.
Yeah.
You have 2 boys, Shoreen. How do you explain it to your, I know your kids know about your history. How do you explain to them what's going on so that they
How old are they?
12. My older one is 12. He'll be 13 in April, and my younger one is 9. It has been really hard for me because I've been really emotional about it.
Right.
And it's hard for me to hide my feelings, and I don't want to scare them. And especially they had this, the immigration ban. Iran is one of the countries, and so that worried them. They said, what does that mean for us? What does that mean for you? What does that mean for our family? And it's hard for me to believably tell them I think it's going to be okay. I try.
Right.
But I don't know that I'm doing the best job. So I try to minimize it. I got a dog. No, I'm serious. Yeah. I was like, they were bugging me for it. I was like, well, maybe that'll help, change the energy. Distract.
It's different kind of poop you have to deal with.
That's Motherhood 101 right there. If you can't answer, distract.
So, we've been trying to talk about it. My kids are a little bit especially my older one, they're the kind of, my son is, he gets obsessed with Hamilton and not just learns all the songs, but then reads the Federalist Papers. So,
wow.
You can't lie. They're aware. But I try to
And he's in junior high.
He's in 7th grade, yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah. So we try to have conversations, and we try to talk about what it means, and I try not to, I don't have cable news on all the time. It's things like that. I try to reduce things. It's how do we I don't know the answer.
Right.
I mean, how do we walk that line? The election night, they were worried. They were upset, and and so we'll see. I mean, I think we're taking it day by day, and I honestly don't know that I'm doing the best job of it. A couple times I think I've made them cry. So
Only a couple? You're good.
On this issue.
Yeah.
So what about you, Cindy? So how old are your boys?
So I have 3 boys, 14, 9, and 7.
Okay.
And Shoreen and I think, are a little bit different in how we parent our boys, especially when it comes to current events. And I should probably take a page out of her playbook. I think about that a lot. How they talk about the bubble, and we've all been in this bubble. I think in some ways, at least with my younger 2, I'm trying to keep them in a bubble. And it's not that they don't know what's going on. They went to vote with me. We all put our hands together and pulled the lever for Hillary Clinton. And I got very emotional and said, this is the first time that we get to vote for a woman that's going to be president.
I literally had that same, I got emotional. I said the same thing. Like, I was so emotional because I took Sam with me, and I had the same. Yeah, it was powerful. Anyway.
No, but it was powerful, and I had no doubt.
And we believed.
Yes, I had no doubt. And I have a very close friend who was saying the opposite is going to happen, was as terrified of that as we, but had really sort of done a deep dive and was one of those people who said, I'm really concerned this is going to happen. And we were like, no. So that happened. And then, of course, the results were not what I expected, or certainly what my children expected based on what I said. So I had a real conflict in them believing me anymore. I had so much assuredness and confidence when we went to that voting booth and pulled the lever that I had to admit I was wrong, and that I misjudged it, and that the country that we all love didn't do what I thought it was going to do and what so many people thought it was going to do. And so I wonder over time, when they're a little bit older and they look back and reflect on that, whether it will have an effect. Like, but Mom said this was going to happen and it didn't. So I have a little conflict, internal conflict. I was wrong with 63 million other people, but you know what?
Right.
But I'm the mom of these children, and so that's all that really mattered in that moment. So since then, I have found myself using words, that maybe I shouldn't, not super bad words, but I think I'm trying to be really careful about evil. And, at the same time, my children were Jewish, and my children go to religious school, and my older one, especially in the middle a little bit, are starting to learn about the Holocaust and what that meant. And they have upped security at their religious school, and they're sending notes out regularly about what that means and what you need to bring and what kind of identification. And that has not been the case to this degree. And so you cannot deny that there are changes that they see, but I am doing my best not to exacerbate them. And I do think that school for them is a safe, happy place. And that's where they spend most of their time. And I'm trying to let them have their life while, Shoreen and I talk on the phone incessantly about what we can do to make the world a better place.
Right. It's interesting. I didn't take any ownership in terms of
Good for you.
No, I just mean like, I was
What?
like, that's powerful. I didn't think I filled his head with any. That's weird. Like I literally didn't. I just didn't take that much control over what had happened. I told Sam, how democracy works, and this is I told him I didn't think we would ever elect Trump, but I didn't feel bad that I had misled him. So
I
now
feel like I had to say I was wrong. I said I was wrong about it.
But I think that's actually the lesson that will be more valuable in their lives, is that you thought, you really truly believed, and it didn't go that way. And now they're watching how you handle that. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
If you are not getting out of bed because you were wrong, and not picking yourself up and moving forward and trying to figure out what you can do with this information, then that would be detrimental.
Right. But
to see you so positive and so sure that this is what's going to happen. And then you're like, wow, life is not
See, I guess what I'm saying is that
point. That's a good point.
my conversations, and it's not that anyone's right, but my conversations were, we have a say. This is how the process works.
Right.
You know, I did more of a global thing that starting with an advocacy position as opposed to I have the power to change this.
I took my boy's phone banked.
What?
My boy's
I know
phone
you did.
banked.
Well, yeah.
Like my 12-year-old made phone calls.
Right. Wow.
You know
That's
what I'm
great.
saying? But
How cute is that,
I don't
too?
mean
It's so
to criticize. It's not a criticism, but I really. So I guess that's why I'm saying I didn't take like I got it wrong. It was like this is how our country works. This is why you have to pay attention. This is why I watched as much as I did, and I read and I researched because I wanted to make educated choices.
But also focus on the people though that did not go out and vote. The people who you know what I mean? Because if everybody had done their job.
Well, but here's the thing. If you talk to people about why they didn't vote, it wasn't because they didn't want to be, you know, having their civic duty. They didn't vote because they didn't feel like either candidate represented their values.
Right.
And so that was their way of voting in a way that like abstaining was like, and it worked against anyone. But I think that was what people were saying. I don't want either. Like this is not working for me either. And so
it's democracy's version of jury nullification.
Right. But you know what I'm saying? So I really am trying to have some compassion for people because I had conversations. Like I have friends that are like, I didn't vote. I voted for everything else except that. And they were upset.
Yeah.
It wasn't like,
I know a lot of people.
It was just, I didn't go out of my house. They just said I voted for everything else but. So I think that's when you said people didn't vote. I'm like, no, that's not actually what happened. It was just people that like they were
abstaining was voicing their opinion.
And so for me, I've been really working on Sam and I've been talking about that. I think it depends on your kid, it depends on you, it depends on how you've, you know, led up to that. I think, you know, part of why we wanted to have you guys and why we've been talking is because despite how you guys feel about the outcome, your mood has changed to a place of advocacy and a place of what can I do? And I think that's where a lot of people in this country, regardless, like I get notifications now on my phone. I've submitted, you know, my name to everywhere, and all these things I could be doing. And I'm really sitting here and thinking I would be doing certain things regardless of who is in office. Like I am really taking a more educated and informed movement in my own life to like make good choices. But I think that's where you guys are at, that yes, you don't like how the election turned out, but you're trying to do something positive. So like,
well, and I think the best part of it and the most positive thing that I've seen for me is the number of people who never were involved, who were kind of bystanders, who showed up maybe once every 4 years to vote, are now engaged in the system. I mean, this is the way it's always supposed to be, who are finding out, who for the first time know who their congressperson is.
Right.
Like, who had no idea.
Right.
And had to look it up.
Yeah.
And who are making a difference every day by getting their voices heard. I mean, some of those people not only didn't know who their congressperson was, but I submit probably didn't know who their senators were. But
I had to go back and remind myself what the difference was and how this. I literally like dumped myself back off in political science. Like
and that is an amazing thing to see, right. and it's making a difference, and people are starting to feel and understand their own power, and that an individual does have power. And it's Cindy and I were joking about how, you know, one sort of derogatory term that people use against, you know, liberals or Democrats or is like snowflake, right? Have you heard this?
Yes.
But I was telling her, I'm like, anybody who skis, anybody who's been in the mountains know that like millions of snowflakes can make an avalanche, you know, right?
Good.
Can make a
That's
blizzard.
Such a good analogy.
Right?
Yeah.
Like can
Shireen's really smart.
can shut the town down.
Yeah.
Right.
And so
I was a little concerned about the language that was about to happen.
I know. I realized. I know. Did you see it?
We're on the radio now. The town. Yes, the town.
Did you see me change it?
It's so funny because I'm over here on the board, like looking at people, making sure, like I start to see something, you know. So
But,
funny.
It's interesting. I was on my way in this morning while I was sitting in the driveway, not coming into the studio. I was listening to MSNBC, and there was a senator on. I don't know. congressman, I think, from California, and he was a Democrat, and he was saying, almost echoing what you were saying, that regardless of what you feel, he said it's waking people up. And he said, you know, he's like, we are always encouraging people to get in touch. And he said emails, tweets, you know, letters. And he said, but what people in office respond to the most is phone calls. He's like, there's nothing
and
like
showing up.
Yeah. And he said, there's nothing like hearing the phone ringing all day long and having the first thing come out of someone's mouth say, I'm a constituent. And he said, we hear that because that's who they're responding to. And I think that's what's happening again on both sides.
I read that the Capitol switchboard has never received more in history by times 2.
Right.
3.
And I think, and again, both sides, there are people that are calling in favor of. And I think that's the part that.
Well, and the truth is that you can be, and if you look at issue by issue, it doesn't, you know, there's things that you can say I'm a Democrat, but you can agree with some things that, like, where are the points of agreement?
Right.
There are things that maybe you're conservative or you usually vote Republican, but you agree with on immigration or on the environment or, you know, protecting national parks.
But no, everybody wants to be right. So nobody wants to come to the middle and actually agree on things.
I get so offended when someone's like, oh, you're just a tree hugging liberal. I'm like, why? Because I like one issue. Like, let's just what's with the categories?
Because we believe in equality. Is that, you know?
But that's how it works. I'm all over the place. You know, I'm all over the place how I vote. And I think, but you know, echoing what you said, Shireen, I think this is a time that people are really starting to pull the veil back. So what are we going to do?
Right.
Jackie, what?
So we have to take a quick break, but we will be right back with Broadscast.
Subscribe to Broadscast on iTunes.
What does being a broad mean to you?
A broad tells it like it is. Doesn't take no for an answer.
She exudes confidence.
A warrior princess of the urban jungle.
Being a broad is being diverse.
Strong enough to do things on your own, but smart enough to know when to ask for help.
We succeed. We get right to the top.
Being a broad is 10% of what happens to you and 90% how you deal with it.
Broadscast, where every broad's voice matters.
Connect with the Broads on Facebook at facebook.com/Broadscast.
Welcome back to Broadscast with Kim Goldman, who decided to show up today, and Jackie McDougall. It's our Broad Squad hour, which is honestly one of my favorite shows because we could just shoot the breeze. I don't have to do as much work, let's be honest. So we have Shireen and Cindy here, moms, and Cindy, you're married.
I'm married
to the fabulous Jack, who I've actually had the pleasure to work with.
The fabulous Jack said to say hi to the fabulous Jackie.
Oh, thank you. We're like the Kennedys, you know. And then Shireen and Kim, you two are both single at the moment, right?
Yeah.
Yes. So, well, our little friends, listen to me, over in the heart of the Florida Keys, at the Faro Blanco Resort and Yacht Club, are doing this contest. If you head over to our Facebook page, you can win a destination wedding. So you too, I mean, if you build it, they will come, right? So why don't you win the destination wedding?
LGBTQ still have rights right now, so maybe me.
I'll be your
you know what? You
bridesmaid.
could do worse. Yeah, totally. We have to be in the wedding.
I will gift it to Kim.
But it's very cool because they're having this destination wedding contest, and you head over to, you could find it on our Facebook page, but you just tell your little love story. So you and Jack, you could go renew some vows, or
That would be good.
Listen, it's about time.
How long have you been married?
We've been married for 15 years. We worked on the Oprah show together. He was actually my producer. He was my boss.
Oh.
And we had a little
Scandalous.
Yeah.
And that's the last time he was your boss?
Yeah, as he says. Yeah, that's exactly. I'm the boss now.
Yeah.
No, but we met on the show. He was one of the few straight single men that worked at the Oprah Winfrey show.
Oh, yeah.
And in fact, Oprah once said
She
live
nabbed him.
on the air, Oprah called Jack 70% woman. So, I mean.
Well, the 30% is what counts, right?
That's right. That's right.
So
all we need is 30%.
I also met my husband in television. We
you
were
did?
both, we were friends for 4 years, but we both worked on Queen Latifah's first talk show together. Not as successful as Oprah Winfrey.
But successful in love.
Yes,
which is all that
exactly.
matters.
So it's so funny because I've worked with Queen Latifah a second time.
Right,
I'm
that's
like,
right.
you had a table named after you at my wedding. And then our wedding song was actually a Harry Connick Jr. song.
Oh, I thought it was a rap. A
Oh,
rap.
no, wouldn't that be
by
awesome?
Latifah.
Yeah, it's UNITY.
Yeah.
Oh my God, that would have been amazing. Right?
Yeah.
It just
Well, when you
occurred to
renew your
me.
vows,
I
14
feel
now I
Jackie
have to-
renewing her vows in Florida coming on with Queen
Exactly.
Latifah as a special guest.
Yes, exactly. She could do. She could be. Maybe she could do the ceremony. Yeah. I don't know if she's.
But we were talking about this promotion, and I was reminded that I went to Shireen's wedding, and it was
That's right.
like
It was crazy.
it was
It was
like
the wedding of
Weddington.
the decade.
it was unbelievable.
Really?
Your
Yes.
wedding, but I mean, so fancy and
Was yours fancy, Kim?
I went to your wedding.
I mean, it was.
That was the day I got engaged. Remember?
Oh, I do remember
Yes,
that.
I remember that.
Did you upstage the bride? Was it on the dance floor?
No, I didn't get engaged that. I didn't even bring him, but because we were only dating a few months, and then I think he was supposed to propose the next day, and then I was like, "Listen, I'm going to this wedding," and I had accepted, and I didn't want to be like the person who called, like, "Can I bring a plus?"
Right,
it's
right.
obnoxious. And so I think he was like, "Oh, she's going
wouldn't
to
have
this
been the only
wedding
one.
alone." So he like jumped the gun and proposed before I went to the wedding, so I didn't go. Like,
Single
Wow. He's like,
Don't catch that bouquet.
So that my wedding was fancy for me, but like it was me, and your wedding was appropriate for you. But like, if you had to do it again, would you do like a destination wedding? I mean, would you like do what you did, or would you just go to the city hall?
I would never do
go
it.
to
Well, let me paint the picture.
or do it at all? Yeah.
My wedding was like 400 people.
oh my God.
Okay, so just as
traditional Iranian.
No, it was a church wedding.
yeah, but the
The
reception
reception.
was next
tent.
door. It was on the property
Yeah.
next door
In
to your
California?
house.
Yeah, in my
It was just
Bel
there
Air.
was just there was just no there was nothing. It was just a blank.
a
There
tent.
yeah, it was a tent.
Wow.
Yeah, like crazy.
Yeah,
Up a
yeah.
steep
We had
driveway,
like
yeah.
we had like these Persian dancers bring us in, and we had. I mean, it was.
Were you on like the big chair and they carried you?
I
in,
mean,
like,
kind of. But I was like, Mom, these girls, like, she brought these girls who dancing come in. They're like gorgeous. I'm all, hello. Do we have to have like the gorgeous like girls in the skimpy outfits bringing me in? I talk about getting upstage. Like, dang.
That's funny. So I've asked this to Kim offline before, but I'm fascinated with talking to people about their weddings because I wonder if there's ever any sort of correlation between how big the wedding was and how extravagant and expensive and the success of the marriage.
You know, it's so
Now
interesting.
you worked at Oprah. Do you have? What are your? You've seen a lot of
Working at
people.
Oprah did not equal an extravagant wedding.
No, but I just mean like you've seen a lot of people in a lot of weddings, like and a lot of marriages.
I would say I had a lovely, moderate,
It was a nice wedding. It was
beautiful wedding with people that really, really mattered. I think there are very few people, if I had to do it over again now, that would be cut off the list. You know, it was sort of the core.
Oh, I have a lot.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, a few people, you know who you are. No.
It's like having
I
that
think
first kid and then the
success of
second kid.
I'm not
you know,
sure the
you're like-
success of the marriage has anything to do with the wedding itself. Maybe that's just because I've been married a long time and it's working. But
I was
maybe you can
fascinated
speak
over the summer. I was in Kauai, and we were sitting by the beach at that. What is that? Up in Honolulu, by Honolulu, at the hotel. And there was this couple who were getting married, but it was just them. They were the only ones, and the hotel staff. And I was completely obsessed with it. I'm like, now how is this like? How did they plan? I mean, it was a whole. They had photographers. They had, the hotel people were their witnesses. They had a dress and walked around. I'm like, this is so interesting. Like, did they allow? Like, how? When did they? And I was trying to be a reporter and like grill the hotel staff. I was like, so
I'm fascinated.
My friends
though.
did that. My friends did that in Mexico. Just the two of them and the hotel staff. Yeah, they loved it. And then they came home and did a reception here, but they just went off on their own thing.
it was really
And
romantic. They were clearly like older. It was, I mean, I'm
fascinated by renewing your vows. I'm never quite sure why people feel the need to do that. Anyone?
Well, I think I've seen some couples who maybe
I didn't last long
hit
enough
a
to be
rough
in that
patch,
position.
and things were like extremely challenging, and they struggled, and then they were like, okay, they've recommitted. They wanted to have that,
And maybe their vows changed, or they
they wanted that ceremonial thing to say like, I'm in it right now.
Right now.
I'm in it to win it.
I'm in it to win it.
I like the idea.
Interesting.
Even at like 25 years because let's be honest, like marriage is hard at times.
Yes.
And so if you hit 25 years and you've gone through having kids, you went from that couple to having kids and then all the stresses and whatever happens in your life. And then to even if you're just the two of you, to recommit and to say like, I'm here and this is something, I don't know. I think it's really romantic.
I think it is. And I think it gives you like a reason to refocus on it and to think about what those vows mean and how would you change them or how
I just want to register again.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know that I would have like a big
eaten in the dishwasher.
Seriously, I have like plates with chips on it from Crate and Barrel from, we've been married 14 years.
I still have my dishes from my wedding. My original set.
You do?
Yeah, but there are a lot of people like after they get divorced.
You didn't like Greek wedding that and start smashing
them. One of my girlfriends yesterday called me. She's like, "Oh, I just dropped off all my china at some consignment store." She's like, "I'm getting rid of." She's divorced. She's like, "I'm getting rid of my china, my crystal. Like, I don't need it."
Is that it's like the equivalent? It's like the very expensive equivalent of saging the house.
Yeah.
Like
right.
No,
yeah.
Or making some extra cash.
Exactly. To pay for the
little Botox money.
I don't know. It's interesting. We were I was talking to a friend yesterday who we're going to potentially have this gentleman on the show at some point, but it's a marriage and family counselor, and he was talking about women and the movement of women and what he's been witnessing with politics and like this whole women's march and what he's just been noticing the last couple of years. And he predicts that over the next 40 years that women are basically going to take over, and that there is this movement towards women in like their late teens, early 20s to start, experimenting a little bit more with their sexuality, and that they're feeling more comfortable just being with other women, and that they don't really need men as much, and he really feels like men are going to become obsolete. Do you guys have any thoughts? Because Jackie and I both had some thoughts about that.
Oh, I mean, I think that's.
But like, because women can get pregnant by themselves, they're moving up the ladder, they're holding more leadership positions. Like, do you have?
I mean, I think. I don't know. I have two boys. We all have boys. I mean, I think that, and I think about my father and the men in my life, and even like their father. And I think men have an incredibly important role to play in society and in our culture. And I think that, has it changed? Has it evolved? Absolutely. And I think what we're seeing right now is like some tension around that and around how women have evolved and women do have more power. And I think that there's tension, there's resistance, and maybe there's some men who don't really like, how do I fit into that in this new culture? And so I think part of what we've seen in the political landscape is a backlash to some of that,
right?
And some sort of sensitivity. But I think that we have to, especially as moms of boys, like really be sensitive to it. Boys can often like get lost. I think that there's a lot of like lost boys out there right now who don't really know like how to fit into this culture, who are exposed to incredible violence like online and video games and in their, culture, but yet maybe that traditional role doesn't exist anymore, and they're, getting conflicting messages. And I think like, as much as there's a conversation about the role of women and the future of women and empowerment of women, I think there does need to be for boys and men too. I mean, that's kind of how I feel about it.
I lost my dad when I was really young, and so I was raised by essentially a single mother with a sister and a brother. And so the role of women in my life being the strength and the backbone and being the ones to always make it happen, I think probably catapulted me personally to want to be successful and independent, and I agree with Shoreen, the role of men is really important, especially if you have good men in your life, whether it's your father, your brother, your cousin, your boss, your employee, whatever. But I also think that this idea of women becoming more powerful could be a positive thing in keeping everybody a little bit off balance and having to work harder to figure out what the new world order should look like. And so when the women are coming together and becoming powerful, and yes, having children on their own and, you know, experimenting with other women. And it's not that we don't need them, but I think that sort of off balance for a minute is not a bad thing, to have everybody sort of re-identify with who they are and who they want to be, if that makes sense. It's not just women always and only exclusive, but let's not keep it how it's been all the time. Let's test the boundaries and push the envelope a little bit and see what positive changes can come from that. Because in the same vein as the sexuality and experimenting and all of that, you know, women have so much of the financial power in this country, the buying power, the spending power. You know, people talk about it, you know, it's not a new thing, but, you know, if women didn't go shopping for one day to buy everything from, you know, groceries to, you know, shoes for the kids, the economy would shut down. So I think understanding our own power might be a good first step.
And I would add to that, if you look at history and any kind of authoritarian regimes, I mean, I saw this in Iran, is the first thing they do is try to shut down the women or shut up the women.
Yeah.
Because they know
well,
how
you know, it's
powerful they can
interesting.
be.
You know, women, I think even with the Women's March, you know, it's all
Did you guys go?
No. We've talked about this on the air that day. I am not a marcher.
Well, it was so crowded there was no room to march. You really just stood in place with a sign.
So honestly, that would have probably given me incredible anxiety because, I wrote about it on Facebook because I really struggled with not going because I wanted to be doing something. But the truth is, I do something every day, and there are other ways that I march that don't mean me having to go stand in a crowded space, but that leads
everybody needs to find their own voice in their own way. Otherwise, we'd all be standing wall to wall and not doing other things.
But I think that's what brings me to what I was going to say. That I think there's this belief that, you know, when women get together, we just cackle and we bitch and we
do that,
right? and we're very emotional and blah blah blah. But one of the major things for you guys is that you are wanting to do something different than just bitch and complain. And so you guys are wanting to create a little movement of your own, right?
Yeah.
So either one of you, tell me a little bit about what you guys want to do.
Well, we're still forming it, but I think it's coming together in terms of one of the things that, I don't know why maybe everybody was asking each other, but I got a lot of people asking me immediately was what can we do? What do we do? And even my children. And then when I started seeing, and I was just saying things like, I don't know, like subscribe to a newspaper, call your senator. And I felt so powerless about it. And I think this goes back to our conversation about, you know, an individual snowflake. I started seeing like all these little things that people were doing that were amounting to big things. And for me, I still feel like a reporter at heart. And I thought, well, wouldn't it be great to at least start sharing those stories so people can learn from others who are just not politicians, not movie stars, not the rich and famous, but just someone like you and me who decided to create an app, or who, you know, it was just regular women who started the whole Women's March. It was not somebody famous. It was not a politician. It was not a senator. It was not Hillary Clinton. It was just it was like four
people
women
who are
like
moving
us.
the needle.
And so to tell those stories could be powerful and inspiring for other people.
Yeah, I think that's what, you know, tying it back to the beginning where you said, I think people want to be more vested and people want to figure out a way to have their voice be heard. And I think, you know, if nothing else, this is what's coming out of this and what it always should have been. I mean, I think it's so easy to get complacent and forgetful. And I get these little updates on my phone now every day of like things I could be doing. And then I can decide whether or not that's something I want to be doing. But I'm reminding myself every day that I have an opportunity to do, but knowing what other people are doing, it motivates me, you know. I mean, and then I'm inspiring, and then I'm like, yeah, I'm not really it's not really my thing. So like the march was when I was like, we talked about this. Like both of us were having
crowd issues.
Yeah, but we were having angst about like we really want to do that,
but then we also realized that we have a platform.
Yeah,
to talk to people who've marched. Right. Do you know what I mean? So it doesn't necessarily like, and I say to Kim's not a hold a sign, scream out things, but she is elevating the world for victims and victims' rights every single day.
That's right.
And so she does it in her way. And I think, you know, one thing that we need to do as advocates, but also as women in our lives, is know yourself, know who you are and where you can make an impact and where it's not comfortable. And I don't mean that we should all stay comfortable all the time, but what doesn't really work with your sensibilities and who you are. And for many of us, that means marching. And that means, being on Facebook and coming out, getting on our soapboxes. And for others, it means connecting one-on-one and having conversations with people. But we're not all the same. And I think that we can't necessarily judge those who didn't. And I'm not saying that you guys are, but I think a lot of people out there are judging those who do march, judging those who don't march. Like we as women coming into this power or realizing this power, because we've always had it. Yeah. We need to really kind of do a little soul searching and know what we can do and what works for us. And support that.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think, you not marching doesn't mean you're not supportive of the cause, right? It just means that's not your way of sharing, your opinion. For me, just going to the march, it was just, I actually like a good crowd. I'm kind of, I love stadiums. I love lots of people
I'm so afraid,
sharing a common experience. I'm sort of built like that. I'm a connector. And so to your point and Shireen's point about being a reporter and so sort of digging into those stories, and it's sort of like Kim as a victim's advocate, there's so much room for so much change. So what are you great at? Right. Yeah. You don't have to be great at everything or good at everything, but everybody's great at something. So what is that? Right. Is that for me as someone who has relationships with talent and who loves talking to people and digging into the story and connecting them. How can I do that? Can I say, hey, my friend Shireen is really a great reporter. My other friends are starting this website with guest columnists, all, name people talking about the issues. Wouldn't it be great to connect them and have a larger voice? And so, I'm still kind of in that fuzzy gray area where every day something changes. I mean, it really, what was it Jon Stewart was saying?
He said the presidency is supposed to age the president, not the public. But here, let me say one thing to just throw out there to think about. I read something that I thought was really powerful, and I'll send it to you guys, but the headline was like, we were made for these times. And I thought about that because for me, and to think about, if you were made for these times, what does that mean? And are you being called on to grow and push yourself in other ways? And that doesn't mean like force yourself to go march, although I did. I had to force myself to go because if you guys remember the story I told earlier, I have been caught in the middle of Marches Gone Bad as a little kid. And so that like muscle memory came back up, which I didn't even realize like that I was freaked out about that. But guess what? I was. So are there things that we can do that are going to force us to be a little uncomfortable? And is that going to help us grow? Is that going to help our community? And what are those things? Like to face them when there's resistance and get behind like what the resistance is about is just an interesting, like, and I'm not a psychologist, but it's an interesting thing. Like I saw that for myself to dig into that. Now, I wasn't able to like take my kids. I could not take my kids. I was too scared to take my kids. And even last weekend, like the LAX protests, I had a bunch of people, like a lot of friends who went. They were like, come, bring your kids. And I was so like scared to bring my kids. Yeah.
But, it's so interesting because, we haven't seen that much of it in our lifetime, right? The civil rights movement was before us. I do remember ERA, in the early 70s, and the signs and the marches. I remember that as being a very little kid. But
she was in the womb.
But
yes.
Yes, I peeked out. But I guess, I think it's sort of interesting for my children who, have only known one president and an African-American president to see what dissension can look like. And I think the fact that I went to the march and I told them what I told them, but I didn't oversell it. I didn't say this is why we're doing it and this is what it means, because the point isn't the march. The point is taking a step, the beginning, and not becoming complacent when you get used to the new normal as much as you might despise it or have distaste for it. You have to keep going.
Right. So here's the thing. Our show on radio is over, which is very, very sad. But we're not done. So if you're listening on radio, you can head over to Spreaker and continue to listen to us live. Or if you're listening to this later, then you're just in luck because you get to listen to the whole podcast. But anyway, that's how you can continue. But we're going to sign off from radio and keep going. So please keep joining us, and we'll see you in a bit here.
Peace out.
You are listening to Broadscast. For more from the Broads, head to broadscast.com.
All right, we're still here.
Hey, that works. That works.
You know what?
You can't get rid of us that easily.
Exactly. You know what the cool thing
We're
about
here to stay.
podcasting? I mean, that's the thing is like, yeah, I love our radio stations. I love being able to reach people in their cars or wherever they are.
I used to work in radio. That's one of my first jobs. I worked
It's
at
so
KNX
fun.
in college even
really?
as an intern. Yeah,
because I've
and
worked
then
in television like you for
yeah.
over 20 years.
I love radio.
And there's such radio is just so much more freeing, I think.
Yeah.
But
and I'm now obsessed with podcasts.
yeah, but now add to that, podcasting is like you can say and do whatever the heck you want.
Yeah.
You know?
Now can I cuss?
You can cuss. So I'm just giving people a heads up that, you know,
I'm kidding.
it's like ladies gone wild here. Broads gone wild.
So if you're just continuing, but we were talking about the march, and you know, I found myself like trying to squeeze myself into that process, which is what I do in my everyday life when I'm trying to accommodate all the requests that come in and trying to figure out how I'm going to get to my son's basketball game in Pasadena and be the mom that I need to be the team manager to the 25 families that I've committed to. And then how am I going to get on the train to the march? Like, and I literally was keeping myself up at night. And I'm like, the answer can be no. Like,
yes,
and so,
absolutely.
we talk about this a lot. Like, I'm learning in my later years to just not give a
Later
F.
years.
Like, I don't make excuses anymore.
hobbling along,
Like when
yeah.
people say to me, like, can you? No. And I don't even give a reason why. I'm just like, I can't do it.
0 F's coming from her.
But
That is so
But
free.
no is a powerful thing, and you've earned the right to make decisions about what you want to do and how you want to spend your time and where you want to put your energies. And it's never just one thing. Right? There's a myriad of things that you can do. And like you said, you're getting the newsletters or all of the, requests every day, and you say yes, no, because it has to feel right for you, or it's actually not going to be effective in the way that you intended.
Yeah, but I think I still struggle with that, wanting to be a people pleaser and like wanting to do it all. I mean, we talk about like the super women, and I despise that phrase. Like, we can have it all. Like, I don't want it all. Like,
Well,
I'm exhausted. I
you
don't
know how I
want
feel.
it.
You know how I feel about that
Cynthia
topic.
McFadden once told me, you can have it all, but not all at the same time.
Or,
Right.
right. I mean, I early on in my career at Oprah, I was married to a producer. I had a baby. The schedule was crazy. We worked many, many hours and weekends, and it just wasn't a schedule I could keep. So I had to sort of figure out what my new role might be. And it was about redefining what having it all meant.
Absolutely. If you actually look at my Facebook profile, it might, and you get that little tagline or whatever, mine is having it all as a state of mind.
Yeah.
Because I feel like I have it all.
Yes. It's just redefining what all means for you.
And does all mean that I need to be like president of a network? Maybe when I was 22, but as I, got married and had kids, like that's not my all.
No. And being able to say that, allows you to say no gracefully and powerfully. And it doesn't make you an unkind, unhelpful
Were you
person.
always that way though?
I kind of was. One of the great lessons that my mother taught me was that guilt was self-imposed. And I have hung
Wait, but
on
you're
to
Jewish.
that. I am Jewish. I don't have a typical Jewish mother in that way. And so guilt is not something that resonates with me at all. I make decisions. I make the best decisions I can. I make mistakes, but I almost never feel guilty. And so saying no is powerful, and you should, because it probably means you're not right for that. You probably shouldn't do that. There's somebody who can fill that space in a more productive way.
Right.
And
That sounds very Oprah-esque.
But at the same time, but at the same time, if somebody else makes that choice to become the president of the network or do whatever it is, and they have 17 kids at the same time, like it is not my place to for me to judge that person that they're not doing the right thing in their life only brings turmoil to my own life. it doesn't affect her.
Right. I mean, she might not have to make 15 lunches and 10 snacks every week. Oh, sorry. That's just my...
I hate
Yeah, well,
lunches.
I've
one
had
kid.
15
I've had an
lunches,
exchange.
10 snacks
Yeah, that's me
every
too.
week.
I have 3 as well, and I've had an exchange student for the last 3 weeks. So I'm like, oh my god, that 4th lunch.
God.
You know,
You are an overachiever
Oh,
who's redefined what having it all means.
I just sign up for hot lunch.
My kid refused the hot lunch. I'm like, please eat the crappy food.
No, ours is, well, mine go to private school, and it's like absurdly expensive and ridiculous. It's like,
and then you have to pay for the hot lunch over that.
Wait, what?
Yes. I mean, it's like organic and gluten-free.
My 7-year-old is having crab sushi rolls today.
Oh my gosh, that's hilarious. But
amazing.
let's talk about this for a second, because we talk about this whole having it all thing, right? How privileged are we as, middle class white women?
Oh, they're going to say middle-aged.
Middle-aged,
too.
middle class. Yeah. But to sit here and go, like, do I have it all, when there are so many people who are just trying to get the food on the table? You know what I mean? Or get their kids a positive education, or so I think that these movements, to go back to that, it's really important for us, and I've said this many times on the show, to use that privilege, to use that ability to then bring other people up to a level that they deserve to be at. Do you know what I mean? And I think that's where the resistance is not just for, we don't like this guy, he's mean. It's we are all equal. We are all, and then, we've had people on talking about racism and this and that. And like, I strongly feel that when you are a victim, like Kim, even if you go back to like where you were 21, 22 years ago, and all the people that you work with, you can't fight for yourself necessarily when you're in the middle of it. Right. It's important for all those people, like, look at these friends you have, because people who supported and lifted you up around you. And so if we have, people trying to flee other countries and war and poverty in our own nation and all of this stuff, it is our job, whether we march or we host shows or we just talk to other people or we donate money. Yeah. I think that's the really important thing that we do, is to not just elevate our own cause, but the one for everybody.
And I think that we have to think of it too. I do a lot of work and consulting with people in terms of my job, communications. And I've learned that stories are so powerful. And that's why when we were talking earlier, personal stories, people, just the way that we have evolved and the way our brains are wired, do not respond to numbers. They respond to individual stories. And so that's why I think it's really, really important for people to tell their own stories and to tell the stories of those who don't have a voice, and make those as individual and as rich as possible, because that's what we connect with. That's what gets through.
But do you think, though, that, and I don't disagree with you, but we're all coming from a time period, though, where we said earlier that internet didn't exist the way that it does now, social media. We were able to develop and tell those stories because our attention span was a lot greater and we tuned in. Yeah. And now, you get your information in 140 characters or less. People read headlines, and then when you click on it, it takes you to an ad for Viagra. Like, I mean, we don't
people comment on headlines without reading the story.
Yeah, and you don't have the opportunity. This is a really terrible analogy I'm going to use, but I did an interview for ABC the other night because February 4th is the 20-year observation of the civil verdict. And I went into it very clear about what I wanted that conversation to look like, because I'm tired of talking about XYZ. And it was originally going to be a live interview, which I would have much preferred to do because I have control over that. Now it was an edited version, taped, edited. And I was so adamant about what story I wanted to tell. Well, lo and behold, as we all know how it works, what they're promoting is the smallest part of what I shared in that story. And I don't even want to watch it now because I don't want to talk about that one thing that I casually mentioned that now is the lead part of it. And so the reason I bring this up is because the storytelling is there, but we're not, it doesn't always fit.
Sell.
It doesn't sell, and it doesn't fit the agenda. So how do we fix that?
Well, first of all, you tell the story right here that you wanted people to hear.
Well, No, I mean,
No, but I think that if you want that out there, you have to not give up and just go, oh, they edited it out.
I know, but that's such a horrible word. No, I didn't mean to I just using it as an example that
it takes a lot more work because it's a lot noisier and it is a lot harder to break through. It takes a lot more work and it takes a lot more discipline and it takes a lot more preparation. So my thing is, at least what I tell my clients, I'm like, if you're showing up to these things and you're winging it, then you're giving up your shot.
Right.
To quote Hamilton. But because it is so easy to get taken out of your control. So actually, really sitting down and thinking through, and if there's something like that you didn't want in there, not bringing it up. They can't use it if you don't say it.
Right.
So it is hard and there's no perfect answer. It requires a lot more discipline from the people who are trying to tell their stories.
But what about the people that
hard.
are wanting to, like, okay, this is again another horrible example, but so Kelly Conway was on the news the other day and she referred to the Bowling Green massacre or something, which didn't occur. So, but now the world thinks that there's a bowling. So I'm like, wait, Bowling Green, like that's in Ohio. So I'm like now researching but I'm just saying I'm researching, and so the discipline that I'm taking to go find out more information, but I don't think that there's a lot of people that have that. So
I think more and more people are doing that. That there's been an awareness raised. I tell my kids that now too. I'm like, don't believe anything. Like, find the source material. That's always, propaganda has always been a tool. It is now more powerful given the internet and what is it's probably.
But people don't even look. If you look at what is being shared on Facebook, I always look to see where the link is. Right. And there are websites out there that are getting incredible traffic that never existed. That because they're writing these stories that people are attaching emotion to, whether they're right or wrong.
But I think you have to be, as moms with kids who are starting to engage in social media, and, I've asked my 14-year-old many times, how do you know that? Well, it was on Instagram. How do you know that?
It's on my Snap.
It was on my Snap. So, those aren't news sources. And I think the onus is on us to explain and show and demonstrate.
But we as adults don't do that. Yeah. Like, I don't know how many times I've read a headline and I'm like, oh my God. And then I realize it's the satirical section of Huffington Post. And I'm like, oh, it's that guy. He's the one. But it's
right. I mean,
or it's called like altright.com or something like that. Like,
well, you know what a friend of mine did? A friend of mine bought up all the domain names that he could think of that they would want. And prevented that for $10, $15, right? And so he owns hundreds of domain names that others would want.
But there was a new one. There was
and that is such a small example of somebody who, what do I do? What do I do for a living? Well, he self-publishes, he does domain names, he connects them to books. So what could I do? I can spend $1,000 and buy 200 domain names that someone else can never have. And so just think about who you are and what your skill set or talent is. And it might not seem like it has a huge ripple effect, but that's one person doing one thing.
Right.
Yeah.
A blizzard starts with one snowflake. Am I playing this out too much?
No, but you're absolutely. I think that's a good way to wrap it up.
Yeah.
If you've learned nothing today,
snowflakes lead to avalanches and blizzards.
Don't get caught in one.
Listen to the
four hats.
Listen to the four California girls telling you that. It's funny because yesterday was Groundhog Day, and somebody had written on Facebook, like, I don't need a rodent to tell me. I know it's still winter. And like, she lives in Northern California. And I was like, really? Do ya?
It is raining today.
It is. It's raining. Yes. We will get through it, ladies. So.
Well, thank you guys, Shoreen.
Thank you. So fun.
I just say
Maghame.
I know,
Shoreen. I'm just Shoreen one Maghame. Name, like Madonna.
I like Shoreen. Just Shoreen.
And Cindy Moore for coming and braving the weather today. We look forward to your future endeavor. We will promote it on our Broadscast page. But I appreciate that you guys.
I love how mysterious we are.
No, but because we don't want to. But more importantly, I appreciate that you guys are doing something of action. That you're not just complaining. I love your complaints. But I like that you guys are wanting to put action behind the things that you're talking about, and I think that's something that gives momentum and purpose to what everybody's doing. Again, regardless of what side you're on, And I appreciate that. And we always like being around strong and opinionated women because it keeps us in shape.
Absolutely. And just, I mean, you said it, like, no matter where you are in your views and your vision, like, women have, stepped up to impact this world in one way or another. And I think that if we continue to support that, then we're all better off,
Good wrap up, Jackie McGee.
Thanks, Kim. All right, that's it. So check us out on Facebook and all of the social media channels, and we will catch you next time. Thanks for listening.
You are listening to Broadscast. For more from the Broads, head to broadscast.com.